Welcome to Hardly. Each book is distilled into 3 stories, giving you the key ideas in minutes. Today, we listen to Lori Gottlieb's Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, a therapist, her therapist, and our lives. Revealed, in which we probe into the struggles of emotional walls and self-reflection, the battle between life's expectations and unforeseen realities, the parallel lives of therapist and patient unfolding together. Lori Gottlieb. Born in 1966 in Los Angeles, Lori Gottlieb is an American writer and seasoned psychotherapist. Don't go away. Hardly. The editor will be right back with the story. Imagine sitting across from someone who believes that everyone around them is incompetent, unable to navigate the world in a way that makes sense to them. There's frustration, a lot of it, and it bubbles out with every new story they share. The world, they insist, is filled with idiots. In this story, we meet John, a successful man who rants about the incompetence of others, from his wife to strangers. He vents about the Apple technician who failed to fix his laptop, the coworker who can't make decisions, and the dental hygienist who asked too many questions. Beneath the bravado, there's something else. John is struggling with the chaos he cannot control. He blames others, but what he's really doing is shielding himself from looking inward. The moment that flips this narrative is when John's therapist, while dealing with her own heartbreak, realizes that John's frustrations mirror her own. She sees her reflection in his anger, and it hits her hard. It's easy to project our pain onto others. For John, the idiots were a distraction from the truth. He was the one out of touch with his emotions. The breakthrough here is that emotional walls only keep us trapped. The moment we start recognizing our own responsibility in our dissatisfaction, we give ourselves the power to change. The solution? We must learn to step back from the stories we tell ourselves about others, and instead ask what role we play in the dynamic. By focusing less on external frustration and more on internal reflection, we start to untangle the real source of our unhappiness. On the other side of the same coin is Julie, a young professor who has just returned from her honeymoon, brimming with hope for the future, only to be hit with a devastating cancer diagnosis. This is no ordinary diagnosis. She learns not only that she has cancer, but that she is pregnant. The weight of joy and grief mixed into one moment is too much to bear, but she fights through it, hoping for the best. When she miscarries, however, it's a turning point. Julie comes to therapy not to dwell on death, but to seek clarity on how to live with the time she is left. Her therapist becomes her anchor, but there's no handbook for helping someone face death. Together, they navigate the difficult terrain of finding meaning in life, even when life's most basic expectations, having a child, growing old with a partner, are stolen. Julie's approach to her illness is not about battle or bravery, but rather about the small moments she can control, the things that make her feel alive. Baking cakes for her nephew, laughing in yoga class. In one poignant moment, she laughs at the absurdity of others, telling her to stay positive, even when death looms over her. As Julie's therapist watches her make peace with her situation, a valuable lesson emerges. It's not about having control over life's big moments. It's about finding meaning in the small, daily joys. For Julie, and for us, the takeaway is simple. Even when life gives us the cruelest of turns, it is possible to find a sense of purpose. Living fully isn't about avoiding death. about embracing life, moment by moment, regardless of what comes next. As we shift into the final narrative, we meet the therapist herself, someone who seems to have her life under control. But, as it turns out, even therapists are not immune to personal crises. Her relationship, which she thought was solid, crumbles overnight when her partner, out of nowhere, tells her that he can't live with her child. It's a moment of shock, one that leaves her questioning not only the relationship, but her entire perception of what they had built together. As she moves through her own heartbreak, she struggles with something deeply relatable. The feeling that her pain is not valid compared to the struggles of her patients. After all, how can she possibly grieve the loss of a relationship when others around her are facing terminal illnesses or lifelong struggles? This is where the real story unfolds. The human experience is universal, and pain, no matter how small it may seem compared to others, is always worth acknowledging. As she learns to accept her own heartache, she realizes that her healing isn't that different from her patients. She, too, has to take one small step at a time, finding her way through the dark, just as John, Julie, and so many others have. Her experience teaches us that there's no hierarchy to emotional pain. It's not about whose suffering is greater or lesser. It's about giving yourself permission to feel and process it, no matter the context. The thread that connects these stories is the challenge of facing our truths, no matter how much we try to avoid them. John's frustration, Julie's grief, and the therapist's own heartbreak all highlight the same lesson. Avoidance only keeps us stuck. When we acknowledge our inner turmoil and accept that life often doesn't follow our plans, we open the door to healing. What do we take from these stories? It's clear. Life doesn't always go the way we expect. But the key to moving forward is not in controlling the world around us, but in understanding the world within us. The more we come to terms with the things we cannot change, the more we find peace in the things we can. As the editor of Hardly, the lesson is clear. The future isn't about predicting life's twists, but about developing the emotional strength to weather them, step by step. Each story comes from the most representative real-life cases selected by the Hardly team from this book. Beyond these 3, there are over 20 more stories worth diving into. If you wish to dive deeper, we recommend purchasing the full book and reflecting on the key points of the book. It's clear that our emotional struggles often reflect deeper truths about ourselves. Whether it's John's misplaced frustration, Julie's bittersweet acceptance of her fate, or the therapist's own heartbreak, these stories remind us that life's greatest challenges often lie within. As we've seen, embracing vulnerability and truth is the only path to real transformation. One final story that left a lasting impression was about a woman named Rita, who came to therapy feeling utterly lost after her retirement. She had spent decades in a high-powered career, her identity tied to her job. But once the emails stopped and the office doors closed behind her, she was faced with a void she didn't know how to fill. Despite the freedom she had longed for, retirement left her feeling invisible and without purpose. Over time, through reflection and guidance, she realized that her life wasn't over. It was just beginning in a new way. She found joy in simple activities, rebuilt her identity outside of her professional life, and discovered that her worth wasn't tied to productivity. Her journey showed us that change, no matter how disorienting, always brings new opportunities for growth. The underlying theme of these stories is that while life often takes unexpected turns, it's how we adapt and reshape our inner worlds that ultimately defines our journey. Each story reinforces the idea that real transformation happens when we face, rather than avoid, our deepest truths. Each story comes from the most representative real-life cases selected by the Hardley team from this book. Beyond these 3, there are over 20 more stories worth diving into. If you wish to dive deeper, we recommend purchasing the full book,